Welcome to the FCMG Podcast. Today is December 8th, 2019. I'm going to stop doing the time thing because then it just makes me sound like I'm drinking at odd hours of the day. But cheers.
Cheers.
And usually it's been a little tradition that I think we started off with and we've been sticking to. So, yeah, Ashley is a graphic and web designer. She works for Meris currently.
Yes.
But you've had a long, interesting journey as well. We kind of wanted to start with everyone that we have on the show. We like to do a bit of a rundown of their history and have them talk about like where they found inspiration, how they got the knowledge that they have about what they do, and then what they do with that.
Okay.
So I would love to ask you where it all began.
Well, my art journey began way back. When I was little, my brother was born when I was about almost 4 years old, and my mom would draw pictures to decorate like his nursery and just get ready, bring in a welcoming environment for the new baby.
Okay.
And I would draw right alongside her. So if she was drawing Mickey Mouse, I was drawing Mickey Mouse. And it just kind of started there. But my grandmother is very crafty and artistic. And my sister Stacy would always draw with us too. She would do more like Pebbles and Bam Bam and like the Flintstones characters. And I would always ask her to draw for me. And then I would try to replicate those. And then it turned into like Pokemon and movie characters, and drawing's really where it all started.
Yeah, that's kind of, I had the same sort of experience. Like my mom was very into like bringing out a big pad for everyone.
Yeah.
And we could all sit down and draw every all the kids would get pencils and whatnot.
That's awesome.
It was very inclusive. And like, there's something about that, doing creative stuff with your parents that like really sparks it as a kid.
I think a lot of people start that way.
Yeah. So your mom was a big influence on you then with creativity in that way. Eh?
Definitely.
Interesting. So then we've got, as always, we have our little list here. So that sort of inspiration that trickled into school. So like you were doing more classes that were oriented towards that, and you had teachers along the way that would sort of bolster that creativity, right?
Yeah. All throughout like elementary school, middle school, I always loved art class. And then in high school, I started getting into like, you could take a web design class, you could take a Photoshop class, you could participate in things like yearbook. And I had teachers like every step of the way helping to guide me. And I really got into the digital art space that way.
That's where it kind of transferred into digital for you?
Yeah. Like I had a really bad Photoshop class, but at least I got to learn the program.
Yeah.
That teacher didn't know anything about design as I know it today. Like she'd probably let the kids use Comic Sans, but but yeah, Miss Maloof in high school, she really guided my like actual art practices, my drawing, and I really got into like chalk pastels and stuff and just color theory. Whereas Mrs. Oblas, I joined yearbook, and she really helped me. She let me take the reins on the yearbook my senior year, and she let me do the design for everyone else to fill in, basically.
Interesting.
So I got to help be part of the concepting team and really do some of the Photoshop graphics that no one else got to do, and she trusted me with that. And
were you using Photoshop to do that in high school?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Our thing was game board themed, so it was all different games throughout time, and each section was a different game.
Oh, I actually
You
remember
remember
that.
that
I remember
one?
that yearbook. Yeah.
Yeah.
It had what was it? Chess on the front or something like
I
that.
created those chess pieces as 3D models in Photoshop.
Wow. Interesting.
It was a tedious thing, but it was so fun to do.
Yeah, and like the quality showed through in the final product.
And you literally only had spheres, cylinders, and cubes to start with. You didn't have, like, everything was built out of those three shapes.
Wow.
And you just added points and manipulated them very slowly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
man.
we gave them to the actual cover artist, and he just smoothed them out and plopped them on. But he used my pieces that I made.
Nice.
So, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
I'm gonna move your mic just a little.
Go ahead.
That'll be better.
Yeah.
Oh, these things are. Yeah, I got
Okay.
There we go.
OBLOS also had a web design class where you learned like the really basic coding level, where you were still like coding in tables format.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was bad. But that's how the internet was still being used at that time, and that's actually how you still code emails to this day. If you're not using like an email builder program.
Okay.
You still have to do things in table format to build out an email and make it actually send, so it's visible in most email clients that people are using, because they're all so different and they all render differently.
Gotcha.
Some of them can handle CSS and some of them can't. So to make them more universal, you literally have to still build things in tables for email, which sucks. Email needs to keep up with the rest of the internet.
Interesting.
But having
so
that
that's
base
like an
knowledge,
older format, right?
having that base knowledge really was the stepping stone to being intrigued by that, the coding part of things.
Yeah. So like getting introduced to the tools and stuff and how to use them, and just even having the opportunity to be in front of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Gave you that start.
Even though the design you could do with tables is very limited, it just opened up that like this is a whole language, and I picked up that language of HTML a lot quicker than I picked up, say, German or Spanish.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So then from there you went to university, and you went to Temple University, the Tyler
School of
Art.
Yes.
Yeah. I had to look at my notes for a second.
You're
there.
good.
Interesting. Okay. So what was that like? You started to, you said the program that you went into started off more general and then slowly kind of specified into more specific arts.
Yes.
Right?
Freshman year, regardless of what art major you wanted, everyone had to do the same couple classes. There was like a 2D like drawing and painting class. First semester was black and white. Second semester was color. There was like a 3D class where you did like sculpture and sewing and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, I forget what the other class was. There were 3 like basics that you took 2 semesters of. And then sophomore year was all about electives. There was nothing required unless your chosen major that you wanted to go into had a prereq. So there was a prereq for graphic and interactive design. So I did have one graphic design class my sophomore year, but I was able to do things like weaving and screen printing and just try out a bunch of different things. So that was pretty cool. And then junior year, we really got into design, where you got to declare your major. So my major is actually a Bachelor of Fine Arts in graphic and interactive design.
Okay.
So not only did we learn good design, but we learned how it's used across all mediums. So we were making books, we were making websites, we were building apps, we were, we did just a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Twist that again. Yeah.
Do I keep moving my head away from it?
Yeah, you kind of shy a little bit, but it's because you want to be able to see around it. So I apologize that there's a mic right in the middle. But
no, you're good.
There you go. It sounds beautiful.
Better?
Yeah.
Better. I just don't want to feel like I'm eating the microphone. That's all.
I mean, you can put it a little bit back, but it's as long as it's straight in
right
that column.
on.
Yeah,
Got it.
It's a little weird, but we make it work here at FCMG. Yeah. Gotcha. So like that degree that you got was like that's a broad scope that encompasses.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of like interactive design.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like I feel like that's another, like it's a different approach to art where it's more about creating an experience for people versus like, you're a painter.
Yeah.
Like specifying your tool versus.
Not that painters aren't creating an experience for people, because they can use that to build a whole room or a whole, what's it called? Like a walkthrough type of thing for people.
Yeah. Like an exhibit.
An actual exhibit or experience. But we're creating a direct experience that people are interacting with, which is why it's interactive design. Websites are very interactive. People click on things and they can manipulate things, and you're the one who controls what happens at that point.
So the focus is more on like experience, like the user's experience versus just like specifying which tool you're going to use to do that.
Yeah. Even like with the book design, we had to build the books by hand so people could touch them and feel them. And we had to think about what kind of paper we were using versus how it was bound. And that all added to the user experience of things.
That's really cool. That's a much more like craft oriented.
It was very concept and thought driven.
Yeah, and like you had to make like physical manifestations of your art as opposed to like I did an online course.
Yeah.
So all of my coursework was submitted online. There was nothing physical that I created, but at the same time I'm working in like a digital film medium. So it kind of makes sense, but at the same time like it was odd even not printing out papers or like not printing anything.
Oh, I had to print out so much stuff. We were all given like I think it was a $50 printing budget at each semester to be able to print stuff. And then after that, you had to pay for it. And believe me, it got used up quick.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I actually bought my own printer that was like a nice 13x19 large format sheet printer to save some money. So the only thing I had to pay for at school was if I wanted something done in 3D or like laser cut or like on the roll paper.
Yeah.
Something larger format than 13x19. Because one sheet of 13x19 was like $2, I think. So that budget that they gave you went pretty quick.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Now, out of curiosity, I'm just thinking about like how you're talking about printers and all this stuff. Like with the advent of 3D printers and like how common they've become now and how inexpensive they've become. How do you feel like that would have changed your experience in that program?
We had one at school that we could use, and I did use it for one of my projects. I don't know. I've always been interested in trying out 3D design and like the CAD, just being able to manipulate the 3D models, which is why I tried to do it in like Photoshop back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I just never really pursued that. Web design kind of took hold of me and wouldn't let go.
Yeah.
But we had to build a board game. And my game had it was called Allowance, and it was about like saving money throughout the game, kind of like a Monopoly almost. And you had to be the first to collect $20 from doing chores around the house.
Gotcha.
And the little player pieces were little piggy banks.
Nice.
So I had those, like I found a file online that I purchased and and like downloaded, digitally printed them out 3D, like the edges were rough on that 3D printer, probably because it was such a new thing at that time. I don't know if that's still how it is when you print them out.
You have to like sort of sand them down and smooth them.
I literally took like acetone and Q-tips and just worked on them until they melted together and it was smooth.
Wow.
And then I spray painted them.
Oh, that's really cool.
It was tedious, but yeah, and my room smelled like acetone for a long time.
Hope you had enough ventilation for that. That's,
I had two nice large windows.
That reminds me of like when I used to do Warhammer figurines when I was younger.
Yeah.
And there were so many times I was up in my bedroom, like tiny little crack in the window. I'm like, the windows are open. Meanwhile, I'm super gluing right under my face. I'm sure that was good for us.
Maybe that's why we're so quirky now.
So there was one last thing that I wanted to talk to you about in regards to your degree. It was the journey from generalizing to specifying, because like by the end of it, you were kind of gunning for more of a career in web design. Is that how it worked for you?
It was kind of the mentality, take whatever you can get type of thing, because I didn't really pursue any internships. I didn't have some of those things that other kids had. I was just focused on making my portfolio the best it could be.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I really like doing things more on the digital side. Not printing, not bookmaking. Like I like those things, but I really loved programming and I really loved doing like digital animation. Just had a lot of fun with that stuff.
You mentioned when we were talking before that you had like a very specific interest in coding. That came into play.
Yeah.
And that sort of started to like steer you.
My sophomore year, one of my electives was actually learning Adobe Flash when Flash was still a thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was one of the only kids in the class that took the time to learn some action script to be able to take my Flash to the next level. And I built an entire project revolving around this Flash website, and it was like an event. I had tickets and a t-shirt and everything else, but the Flash website had so much different things going on just because I was able to add the action script in there. I just like learning those languages, and they kind of build on each other. Once you know one, it's easy to pick up more of them.
Yeah, and there's like interesting ways to integrate those languages too. Like,
yeah, they're all interchangeable. Well, not interchangeable. They all have their specific purpose, but you use them.
They can all interact with each other.
Yes, I use about 4 languages on a daily basis.
That's wild.
So,
like even in my experience as a musician, like I've seen programs where you can use Python to create sounds.
That's cool. I haven't really
like a sound generator.
I haven't really picked up Python yet, but I've seen it out there, and I know there's tutorials out there for it. So that'd be another cool one to wrap my hands around.
I think you can use, is it Python in Blender, or is it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll probably be getting into that in the future here.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. We've been kind of messing around with Blender a little bit, which is a free program. It's open source software that's really, really powerful CGI software. So like 3D modeling and things like that. And
there's so many cool things you can do with that.
Yeah. Oh, it's endless. Hopefully on the live streams, the producers log, we'll get into exploring that a little bit. I think that'd be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I've been going through the YouTube channel of tutorials for that, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. What is that? Does that guy call himself? Is it Blender Guru?
I'm not sure. It's the one that Blender directly links to from the download of their program.
Yeah, which is like,
it's fantastic. Like I'm probably 20 videos into it, and I can just start to manipulate shapes, but it's that detailed that it took me 20 videos to get there.
That's awesome. Like we should link to that thing. It's up in the top corner. You'll see the little thing pop down. Check it out. Blender tutorials. So that sort of interesting coding. It pushed you into the professional realm. You graduated with your degree. What was the title of your degree again? I just think it's so cool.
Bachelor of Fine Arts in Graphic and Interactive Design.
That's like an entire paragraph.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
awesome.
much.
Okay, so then from there you started to work for, was it 2 different companies or just the one at first?
Just Sorrelli.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a job about 3 months after graduation. Mm-hmm. I wanted to enjoy my summer a little bit first. Enjoy one last summer of freedom before I got a real job. But then I got linked up with Sorrelli. I just had my application out to like so many different places. But I've been very fortunate that anyone that I've applied to, and if they actually call me in for an interview, I usually get offered the job. They seem to like what I have to say and my work. So I've been pretty lucky in that respect.
That's great.
But Sorrelli was my first like real full-time job out of college. I did their website, their emails. I got a good overall marketing experience, I guess, from Sorrelli. Just learning how to use what my knowledge and my skills in so many different avenues to promote a single brand. So everything from social media, email campaigns, digital advertising, updating their website, using some Ruby on Rails, beyond just basic HTML and CSS.
Right.
I've
heard about Ruby on Rails. Can you explain a little bit further about that? Because like I'm very basic knowledge of coding. I
worked with a developer on that. Basically, Ruby on Rails was the code that was used to build the foundation of the website. So between Ruby on Rails and pushing things to GitHub, the developer at Sorrelli was able to get together a system.
Yeah.
So that we could push code and live updates to the site.
Oh, cool.
So we would do things locally on the computer, and then using Ruby and GitHub, like a combination of the two, we would push new products to the site. So we would be able to see things staging on our local computer before they actually went out to the public.
That's really cool.
It was a nice testing ground, and I wish I knew how he did that. I never really picked up much more than how to push staging to live and pull live back to staging.
That's cool though. That's like because I mean normally you would have to do like an FTP and like transfer.
Yeah, there was
all the
no
information
FTP.
Of your website.
Everything was local.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know GitHub's a big part of that. That's their whole thing, is to create staging steps, and it records every time like a push or a pull happens, so you can go back to it. It's a versioning history, I think.
Okay, so this is sort of like how like I'm familiar with Shopify.
Yeah.
But that's like if you were to edit your website and then make a revision,
It like tracks revisions.
There's revision history, and then it's also like you literally just click a button. Like you don't have to do like FTP to the actual.
Yep, that's what GitHub does for you.
That's really cool.
And we were using Ruby as the language to push things back and forth.
Wow. Okay.
And he was using it a lot more than I was. He was using it to like literally push updates to the database of like new products and SKUs and pictures and everything.
Gotcha.
Mass uploads.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I did more of like the little things. Like I designed all the emails that went out. So I was hard coding those tables that I learned back in high school.
They're coming back to haunt you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I did a lot of those. I did that for about 3 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And actually,
but I mean, even with like, I would say like more constrictive like languages like that, you're still able to be creative. Like there's still kind of cool stuff that you can do within.
It's called Photoshop and images, which isn't really the best solution, but we would create the entire email design in Photoshop and then slice it up. And then we'd literally drop those slices into the table format. So
it'd be like tiles from a mosaic that would go together.
Pretty much. And each one could be a different link. So I had to be careful with how I cut it up. So that way anything that was supposed to link to something different was separated. So if there was a button in one section, I had to have that button isolated from the next button. So that kind of drove the design with how I was going to slice it up and weave it back together.
That's kind of cool though. Like you literally, like you paint the entire thing and then you cut apart the sections as necessary.
Yeah.
So that they can be like fields.
Which is a decent way to code for email and have it look nice, but it's not as great for anyone who can't receive images or is using a screen reader. Like I know now that that's like actually a really bad practice. It's just a way to make things look nice.
Oh, so like nowadays it wouldn't work with like accessibility standards with the internet.
Exactly.
So like people who can't, like they have impaired vision.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that the internet's becoming like inclusive like that. That's really, that's awesome.
I think there's been things around for a while, but it's becoming a bigger thing. Like actually where I work now, one of our current clients got hit with like a $10,000 fine because their website wasn't accessibility friendly.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, so there's someone out there making a push to make sure that the web is accessible for everyone.
That's really awesome.
It's making me actually learn these ways to make websites accessible so I can implement that in my future designs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
So always learning new things.
I feel like that's a part of this, being a creative professional is like you never stop learning.
Yeah.
I was talking to Foley the other day and he was saying that like his, this is last week. And he was saying that like every single time there's an update, like because he works with these platforms that are private companies, like Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, they can change their algorithms whenever they want. So you have to like relearn the specifics every now and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's crazy.
That's intense.
But one of the biggest things I got out of Sorrelli was when I got there, their website was not mobile friendly. And
that's a big thing nowadays.
Argued and pushed, and they finally, like, that was my final project there, was to design the mobile friendly version of their website, the responsive website.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, I pushed for it and I got that project, and
that's awesome.
What's up there right now anyway is still the framework that I designed for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So that's all your handiwork is on there.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
So you did a whole lot of work with Sorrelli, and then did you move?
No. I decided that after 3 years working with one brand was just a little, I guess tedious is a good word.
Or like creatively constrictive in a way, maybe?
Yeah.
I've heard you mention it like that.
It was challenging to please everybody and continue to feel inspired working in the same field. So I started looking and I found Meris Inc. And they're a marketing firm instead of one company. Okay. So instead of being an internal designer, now I work with a bunch of external clients from a wide variety of fields on so many different designs.
Oh, cool.
So I've probably done, I want to say maybe 30 or 40 websites for them currently.
Wow.
But the clients have been everything from like food space to magazines and publications to like construction and building of restaurants.
That's really cool.
Doctor spaces,
golf
courses, yeah. So I'm always learning different fields, working with different people, different personalities, and it really keeps things interesting because you can just keep coming up with new stuff, and you have to really fit their personality. I'm not just coming up with new designs for the same personality.
That's awesome.
So I like working with that spectrum.
That's something
of
that
clients.
I've loved recently with like I started working with PBS a while back, and it's one of those things where before then I thought that going into any like being a camera person would be like, oh, I'm just going to shoot the same thing every day and then I'm going to be bored. But like you can find these places that are, I like to call them bottlenecks. Yeah. Where they do the work of catching all these different clients, all these different, experiences that you can have. Does that. And then you get to do all the design for all these different things.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
That's awesome. So you really get variety at your work.
Yeah, I definitely do. I've done everything from like full website design to just like some back-end programming. I've developed new tools for our company as well as some of the other clients that we work with, as far as like invoicing systems and like calendar scheduling systems. Takes a little while to work all the kinks out of something new, of course.
Right.
But it can be really personalized for whoever's using it then. And it's a lot of fun to like solve those puzzles for people.
Are there any specific examples of like maybe like ones that were particularly challenging that you figured out or like functionality that you had to design from the ground up, like anything like that?
Well, the one client that I've worked with is Alicia Nicole, and we built out their invoicing system for their brides, and we used a plugin as a base, Sprout Invoices.
I've heard of that,
and it's great basic functionality, and it does what it's supposed to. But they wanted a lot more information than the plugin was originally designed to handle. Like all the details of a bride's wedding are so important. And they do hair and makeup. So they need to know how many bridesmaids and what kind of hair they want and all that kind of stuff. So we had to build out a really extensive, like 3 or 4 page form for them. And beyond that, then connect that form to like an estimate invoicing system that set up the pricing, allowed them to make a payment, and then also push that data to their the Alicia Nicole's calendar on the back end.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening that the user doesn't realize. And anytime a change is made, it affects all of those moving parts.
Wow.
So I did all that.
That's intense. Like it's literally like building a machine, but from a completely like theoretical, it's in your head kind of perspective.
A lot of figuring. It took a long time to get it to a place where it was like I guess good enough for the world to use. Yeah. And we're still working out like little things here and there. Every time the plugin has an update, sometimes we got to work out another kink. It's interesting to see like the ongoing development of something versus something that's just done and handed off to the client, because this is something more technical that the client can't exactly just fix by themselves if something goes wrong, or if an update's made to one of our pieces, we have to accommodate in the custom code and make it all work together still.
Okay. This brings me to another question. This is something that I face in work where like I have the issue where someone asks me a question or I'm supposed to explain something to a client.
Yeah.
And I start going into oh, it's 23.976 frames per second. And,
and they're like, huh?
Yeah. And I just inundate them with information. Like, how do you, because I know that you've talked about being that person who presents and explains and translates all of this coding information and this knowledge of the functionality of their website into something that's digestible for them.
Well, I mainly work with WordPress now, so I do a lot of the back end stuff that they never have to touch.
Gotcha.
What I'm translating to them is literally how to use the basic interface that WordPress gives them and where their stuff lives on the back end.
Okay.
So I literally make a training document out of the entire WordPress menu. Sometimes I throw in screenshots if there's something a little more complicated, and we sit down with them for 2 or 3 hours and really explain the back end and show them every piece of it. Some of the more technical things that are hard to explain are like domains and hosting. A lot of people don't really understand the concept, or if we ask them where their domain is, they're like, I don't know, it's in GoDaddy, right?
Yeah, and it's at stayheavystudios.com. That's where it is.
Yeah.
And it's no, that's not.
It's but sometimes the DNS can point it somewhere else, or you can point your name server somewhere else, and then you don't actually have access to your DNS from wherever they pointed it to.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of explanation that goes into that, and why you need good hosting and not just the cheapest GoDaddy plan available.
Yeah.
Sorry to be ragging on GoDaddy here, but GoDaddy, you need to step up your WordPress game.
Yeah. I've always found it kind of frustrating how I'll buy something from GoDaddy and then the next day they'll be like, hey, get that basically the same domain name, or get another domain name for half off.
And I mean, that's just good marketing on their part.
Yeah, but I've always liked there's a thing that Shopify does where they have a standard price for all their domains. It's the same thing no matter what. Every year you can expect that's the price that you're going to pay.
Yeah, and that's how it is on renewal, no matter where you
Yeah, it stays up on renewal, but I mean I forget what the price is, so I don't want to quote it. I think it's $12.99. It's just
pretty standard.
Standard, every single domain is that price.
If it's not a popular, a lot of times shorter domains are more in demand. Domains. Or more in demand. GoDaddy is a great resale place. So people who are selling their domains, that's when you start to see those higher prices.
All right, so GoDaddy's more of a bidding market.
It can be, depending on the domain you're looking for and how in demand it is.
I remember looking for FCMG.com.
Yeah,
and it
that's
was we have it.
It's 4 letters.
$28,000.
Because someone purchased it and is literally selling it for that price, because it can stand for so many different things, and it's in demand.
Yeah, it'd be ESPN.com.
Yes.
Huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But domain marketing. Don't go crazy with domains if they're more than $20 a month or more than $20 a year. Don't purchase it unless it means a whole lot to you and can do a lot for your business.
Yeah. Or you think it's a really good combination of words that you could sell for a lot of money one day.
Yes.
Then go to town.
Yeah.
I know a couple people that do that just buy
domain buying. That's a whole thing.
Yeah. And then they put it up on GoDaddy and they sell it for as much as they can.
Pretty much.
Nice. All right. Well, our next points on here, it has to do with, we're going to talk best practices.
Yeah.
We did a little discussion with that with Foley, and I figured it might be nice to
Sounds good.
kind of incorporate that into our podcasts. Let's see. The first thing that we were going to discuss was you had some points that you wanted to make on web design.
Yes.
And specifically user experience.
Yes. User experience should really drive your design. Make sure there's enough content there for people to read. Make sure it's actual text and not just text in an image. So that way people with screen readers and for accessibility reasons, Google search crawlers, everyone can read that text, whether you are a person or a robot.
Right. Yeah. So if you were to Photoshop a sentence into an image.
Yeah.
And then put that image onto your website.
If you don't have that alt text on there, no one else can read that except people with eyeballs.
Oh, so okay, I've seen that in a couple of places where it's image alt text.
Yeah.
Where when you upload an
very
image,
important.
you can add that additional stuff.
Yes.
Is that do you typically only use that if if there's words on the image, or do you do that for all images?
I use it for all images. Starting to see out there that if an image is used specifically for decorative purposes, you don't need to include that. Like if you have a nice background image of like a tree or something.
Yeah.
No one needs to read that. No one needs to know that's there. If someone can't physically see it, it doesn't make a difference to the concept of the design or what you're trying to communicate. It's just a pretty picture.
Okay, so it's like you're putting in alt text for the thing, like the story that you actually want to tell.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're using an image of Mr. Stefan Fulton over here on the Full Coverage Media Group website, you're going to want to say like, Stefan Fulton, founder and owner of Full Coverage Media Group in the alt text.
Okay.
So people can, so robots and Google can know exactly why that image is there.
Gotcha.
And anyone who's using a screen reader or has low, like limited vision.
So that's not a place for me to put in all of the settings that I had in my camera when I took the photo.
No.
I'm not supposed to be like, that was f2 at 160th of a second. You know?
I mean, if that's important to what you're talking about at the time, then sure.
Yeah. Okay. So
alt text can be anything you want it to be, but it has to relate to the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Like if you have a picture of spaghetti and meatballs, you can literally just write in spaghetti and meatballs. So that way anyone who can't physically see that image can read it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm sorry, I took us on a tangent there. Let's continue with the UX discussion here.
Yeah. So it's very important to use very few fonts. You don't want to go crazy with your font choices on a website. Usually I try to pick two, like one for headings and one for body copy.
Yeah.
This helps make sure your design is cohesive, consistent, and looks great across the board. You don't want to just throw in 40 different fonts. It's not going to look that great, even if you think it might. Maybe that's a place to put in a nice image if you're trying to create a fun poster design with a lot of fonts.
Yeah.
Maybe that is just an image instead of having to load all those fonts. So that also comes into performance a little bit.
So like those like typography posters where it's like a bunch of different fonts?
Yeah, it's like those can look cool. Maybe it has a purpose in what you're trying to do, but you don't want to actually load that many fonts into your website.
So that would be a good example of where you would put it into an image, load the image on your website, and then use the alt text to explain what it is for people.
Because you're using it as like an example.
That's great.
Yeah, as like an example artwork or... I can't even think. Yeah, you don't want to load that many fonts into your website. It's just not a good idea. It takes too long to load. When you go to use the Google fonts, it starts to like show you too much load on your website. It actually has a little meter for you.
This takes us into our second point, actually, which is what was it? It was.
I wanted to say one more thing about user experience.
Okay, all right, continue.
Yeah, along with the simplification of fonts, simplification of colors, and just simplification of design overall is a good practice to have. Like, you can do some fun things without like covering every square inch of a website with stuff. Like, white space is your friend. And keep that in mind when you're designing. I've
always heard that too. Like Shopify, they would mention that in like their like if you're gonna give people advice about their website, mention white space. If it's all clutter and it's all just big paragraphs and all this stuff, like tell them to give people some breathing room.
Yeah, just adding a little bit of leading to your text. In web design, we call that line space. Yeah, there's different.
That's pronounced leading. I thought it was like leading and kerning,
It's leading and kerning.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kerning's a space between letters and leading's a space between lines.
Ah.
Yeah.
You learn new things every day.
In web, it's called letter spacing and line spacing.
Okay.
So it's a little more obvious. A lot of HTML is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be CSS, but yeah. Yeah.
You and your multiple languages. I can barely speak English over here.
Yeah.
So that kind of takes us into you were talking about smaller images or not smaller images, but like not
fewer fonts, not cluttering up your entire website and all that stuff. Yeah.
Which contributes to a faster load speed.
Yes, it does.
Which has to do with SEO and performance on your website.
So when you're doing SEO optimization and making sure your website is not only pretty and functional, you want to make sure people can actually download it and use it.
Yeah.
So it's important not only that you're searchable in Google, but that it loads pretty quickly and that it's a good experience for people to use performance-wise. So
Gotcha.
functionally, if someone has to wait more than 3 seconds for your website to load, you probably want to switch your hosting plan.
Yeah. I think a trap
Optimize it a little bit.
A trap that we fall into as like producers, this is speaking to all the creative professionals out there, like we typically have better technology than the average user.
Mm-hmm.
So like
that's true.
Someone might be accessing your website from like an older computer that inherently is going to slow things down.
Yeah.
So the faster your website is at loading, regardless of their hardware, the better it's going to be for them. Like it's going to show up better for them even. So it can make a big difference in some circumstances where like, someone's loading from their cell phone and it's a slightly older phone. So like it's going to chug, but they go to your website and it chugs a little bit less.
Then you're going to be their choice in the market.
Exactly.
So ways you can optimize that and load a little quicker. The biggest one I see across client websites is really large images. You want to avoid using really large images.
I'm so guilty of that. Oh my gosh, like full page.
Which is fine to have them for a pretty effect, but at different device sizes, you want to serve them up a smaller version of that image. And you can set up an image source set, it's called.
Oh.
Where on a screen of this size, you're loading this nice big image because that device can probably handle it. Whereas if you're loading it on a phone, it's not bigger than like 800 pixels wide because it doesn't need to be.
Why do I feel like I've seen like apps or plugins for websites that can do that?
I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there.
Like I've definitely seen like compression ones.
Yeah, I use Smush by WPMU Dev on all my WordPress sites.
Nice plug right there. That was smooth. That was you just threw that right in there. All right.
I love their blog. They're fantastic. I do not have the pro version yet, but I will get there. But there is a free version out there, and it does its job really well. So you can set it up so that way if someone else is using the website, like I do build websites and I turn them over to clients.
Okay.
This plugin will actually take, if they upload like a 5,000 pixel wide image, and it will literally smush it down to the right size. So you can set the max width and the max height that any image can totally exist in the WordPress library.
Yeah.
So I usually set it somewhere around 2,000 pixels because we work on really nice iMacs that are 2560 pixels wide.
Okay.
So for our design purposes and for most design purposes, you're not going to really need an image much bigger than that.
Interesting.
So I usually set it somewhere around 2,000. It looks great even if it's blown up a little bit, and it looks great on most smaller devices, which is what people are using these days.
Right, yeah.
So it gets
There's so much traffic on cell phones, like mobile devices.
Yeah, and depending on what industry you're looking at too, it's different.
Yeah.
It can be as much as like 90-10, but I've seen as little as 50-50 these days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Especially if the client is an older age base.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like some country clubs per se would have an older client base.
I would say like attorneys' websites.
Yeah, I haven't built any of those yet, but I'm sure that
they probably serve to an older client base. Interesting.
And older client bases are more likely to still have laptops, computers versus using everything on their phone.
Or a nursing home.
Yeah,
I feel like that'd be
exactly.
a good example.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Interesting.
They would be more likely to use something with a bigger screen because their clients need to see a little bit better.
Yeah. So that's like worth thinking about for companies. Like depending on what markets they're really trying to speak to.
Yeah.
They should tailor the experience to the
their
method
audience.
that they're going to use. Their audience is going to use to access their content.
So it's really important to like put Google Analytics on your website and collect that data, because then I like to say a website's never really done. You can design it and hand it off, but it's something that can always be improved upon and made better, especially once you get that data rolling in.
We say that about film too.
You
never really finish a film; you just abandon it.
That's so sad.
Yeah, like the terminology that they use is a little macabre, but
well, I guess you guys have to release your final product. I don't.
Yeah.
Like I push it out there, but we can keep making it better for real.
Yeah, I that would be so cool if there was like
ongoing video edits.
Yeah, maybe that's worth exploring. Like do a platform where you can release a video, but then you can cut in material and you can like edit it after the fact.
I think people would be sad. You'd have a lot of uprising if you take out something that they really liked about it.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe that's what it becomes. It becomes sort of like a democratic film in a sense, you know, where it's like
I'll put that back in.
Yeah, put that. We love that part. We want more of this character.
Yeah.
And so you shoot more with that character.
Yeah.
You add it in. They're like, yes.
I guess that doesn't work though. If you can't really shoot more at a certain point because the character's either aged out of the role or.
Yeah, I mean, you can get creative about it. Flash forward.
Blender.
You thought they were dead.
Oh no.
Yeah. That's there's all kinds
Oh
of.
my goodness. Anyway, back to SEO.
Yeah, true.
Optimize your images, people. It's pretty important.
Yeah.
Make sure you have good meta tags and meta descriptions for Google to read. Google's getting better about just reading your content, basically.
Yeah.
And
like crawling websites and being able to read the actual text.
Google's starting to read your website as if it was a user reading your website. It gets frustrated with page load time. If you try to use Google Page Speed, it's really interesting. It'll tell you like time to first load, time to first byte, and like from the second the nav appears, it counts that time. And if it's too long, Google's like, nope, you got a bad score.
Damn.
So that's really hard to optimize for if you have any kind of interactivity on your website. They want things to be like really simple and load in order, which isn't always possible to do, but you do the best you can.
Okay.
Especially if you're using a more complex CMS like WordPress, or if you have a photo slider on your homepage.
Okay.
It can take a little bit more work to optimize that.
So is this a situation for you as a designer where it's not like you can make it perfect, but you can get it as close to like you can maintain it at that cutting edge as close as possible? Yeah,
it's hard to please both the client and Google and the user. And it's like all three of those factors you have to really take into consideration. So something you can do if you want that fun functionality of having a slider on your homepage is when the user goes to a mobile experience, maybe it's just the image, or maybe it's a listing of the sliders in flattened image form.
Okay.
So the user's still getting that information that you're trying to convey, but it's a flattened image, so your mobile version isn't loading all that JavaScript to make the slider function.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so like sliders and stuff like that, that's a different type of code then. Any
kind of moving pieces aside from like short little hover effects are usually JavaScript.
Yeah. Is there sort of like a functional difference between each different type of code that you could explain?
Yes. Okay.
Actually, you know what? Let's hit the last point on this.
Okay.
And then let's talk about it. I'm gonna add a note during a podcast. This is an interesting one. I like this a whole lot. Okay, let's get down here. Okay, so functional difference. Coding languages is what I'm gonna. That's okay.
Yes.
Coding languages, and in the meantime, you wanted to talk about security.
Yes.
Keeping things up to date.
Yes. That is very important. If you're using a CMS like WordPress, Joomla, Shopify, any plugins, and the platform itself, WordPress core, you want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date version. A lot of times updates are made just because somebody broke them. And those holes need to be patched, basically.
So I shouldn't be using Windows 98 is what you're saying? And
it's probably not ideal.
And the beta versions of every...
Well, beta versions are a little bit different because they're the future.
Oh, okay. All right.
Usually.
Those are the things that are like currently in development and being worked on.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're little out there and you want to try the latest and greatest and you're okay with it possibly breaking, beta's the way to go because you can try out those new features before everyone else.
The proverbial bleeding edge, if you will.
Yeah. So usually betas, as long as they're a new current beta, that's fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use them on a live site. And I wouldn't recommend using them on a live site. But if you want to try them out and know that they're going to be good and contribute to that project, there's nothing wrong with betas at all.
Gotcha.
But anything currently fully released, you want to keep it as up to date as possible. Plugins, themes, WordPress core. If your theme hasn't been updated since 2013, you might want to switch it.
Yeah, that sounds like...
a lot of changes that have happened since then. Like WordPress has made the minimum PHP version 7.2, I think now. So some of those older themes aren't compatible with the newer PHP version, and they don't have the latest standards put in place. Okay. If they're not being actively developed, it's probably not worth using.
Yeah.
So it's easier to target for hackers. It's easier for people to break into your site, find backdoors, find ways to literally lock you out of your own site or crash it down from the internet completely.
Or exploit the information of your users.
It's usually like bad advertising for things. Yeah. I've had to clean up a site that had like porn on like a page catering to kids and kids activities. So
is that now I've heard people say that can be like a tactic sometimes where like that's more so in like backlinking where like if someone's trying to do harm to another website, they would like list them, like put like porn backlinks on their website or something
possible.
like that.
That's very possible.
Yeah. So you got to be careful with those. You got to be aware that those aren't on your website.
Don't have your user login name be admin.
That is admin and password are bad. Username password
nice strong passwords. Nice unique usernames that aren't your business name. Yeah, that's another one. They always try admin and they always try your business name.
Yeah.
Adding in a plugin like iTheme Security or Security are pretty good. They both have free and pro versions, and they both scan your site regularly to make sure that there's no malicious code. Files aren't being changed against your will, that type of thing. And it also logs all the IP addresses of anyone who tries to hack into your site. And if they try to log in within a certain threshold, it just blocks them completely from your site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So there's some pretty good stuff out there to keep your site secure.
Yeah.
And there's a really good feature of a host, Kinsta is a WordPress host that we totally recommend and love.
I've heard of Kinsta.
Maybe
you've talked to me about it.
Blazing fast. And they actually have a hack-free guarantee where your site gets hacked on their host, they will fix it for free.
Wow.
Yes.
Not bad.
So it's a little bit more of an expensive hosting plan, but it's a really nice trade-off to have that security.
Yeah, because that is, that's a real danger, and like that can cost companies
millions
and tons of money.
Yeah, just in downtime, sales that you're not making.
And especially if it's like a company like there was a credit card company recently that got hacked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they had to pay out tons and tons of money to like their user base because they had this guarantee where they're like, yeah, we're never gonna get. So if they have that guarantee, it's like you're protected if you do get.
Yeah, definitely, because they'll fix it for free.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad that companies are doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. SSL certificate, make sure that's installed because that'll encrypt the data.
Yeah.
That's important for everybody now, not just people with stores.
Mm-hmm.
It's any transmittal of information. And there's a lot of free options out there, so don't let GoDaddy charge you $75 a year for one.
Yeah. Boom. Laying down the law on GoDaddy there. Calling you out.
They need to step up their game. There's so many hosts that are using like Let's Encrypt. Which is a free SSL cert. And a lot of hosts now are adding that to their program. So you're paying for their basic hosting package, but they'll let you use Let's Encrypt, and they'll help you set it up on their platform just so everything has that encrypted SSL security. So it probably benefits the host as well as the user and the person who's owning the website.
Yeah. That's something that Shopify's always talked to me about. Like when I worked for them, they would mention like a big factor of trust with them is the fact that all of their websites have SSL certificates. So like you get that HTTPS right off the bat.
And they're mainly a store platform, so that's super important for them.
Yeah, when you
have
have
transmittal of money.
Exactly. Yeah, for e-commerce stores, that's huge.
Yeah,
because like they're people that pay with Amazon Pay or Apple Pay, where it like stores their information.
Yeah.
So if that information is being stored on your website, you have to be very careful that you're staying up to date,
encrypted,
with security.
And so that way even people on the back end can't see all that data.
Exactly.
Like I've built stores with WooCommerce, and when someone pays with their credit card, you see the last 4 digits, but you don't see the rest of the credit card number that was used. It's all X'd out.
Yeah.
So it really happens behind the scenes. And it's happening in an encrypted way that even someone who has admin access to the website can't get that information.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's pretty nice to know as a web designer who works on the web, who like not only am I a consumer, but I see the back end of things too.
Yeah.
So making all you consumers feel good about there just because you type your credit card number in on a website doesn't mean that anyone else can see it unless they really are digging deep and hacking into that website.
Yeah, like there's protections in place. Like even with my websites, if I put in, like I have to put in a credit card for my payment gateway. And once that information is in and saved, even if someone else were to like come in and use my account, you don't even see my own information.
Yeah.
So like all of those digits are
erased.
It's like little asterisks instead. So it's protected even on the back end of your own website.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is pretty cool.
That's true.
Yeah.
So.
And then you were saying staying up to date with security is big, but staying up to date yourself with website practices and stuff like this, like these best practices that you just mentioned.
Yeah. They change all the time. So it is important as someone in a creative field or a technology-based field anyway, is if you have to stay up to date. You have to know what's coming up. You have to know what's best for your clients. So like following blogs, reading news articles, there's a lot of different blogs out there depending on your space.
Yeah.
Like I mainly focus on WordPress. So as I mentioned earlier, WPMU Dev, they have a really great blog and they tag into other blogs as well. So I get a great variety of sources. Like it's not just their writers. They really pull together a nice library like 2 or 3 times a week. Some of it's just fun facts and things that are happening like in the WordPress sphere. But some of them are more important, pertinent things like, this major plugin that has 1 million users got hacked. Like make sure you're up to date on the latest version. So then I'm like, okay, now I got to go into all my clients' websites and make sure that plugin's updated so that way they don't get hacked. But it's nice to get those little alerts and things that are happening. Or like Google recently changed its local search functionality. So just getting notified of that the minute that it happens is pretty important. If I didn't take the time to read that, I'd never know that, and I'd never be able to convey that information or put it into practice in future websites.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
that applies to like so many different genres too, because like I used to not really think about it as much. I would think like, okay, knowing the tech that I have is my responsibility. But as technology starts to change faster and faster and upgrade faster and faster.
Definitely.
I realized that a big part of my job is staying on top of what tech is new.
Yeah.
So that's why
and how it compares to your tech and whether you need it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. So like if you can stay on the bleeding edge of the market, you can have that tech specificity, which I think is really important. Like that's part of the reason why I got the Note 10 Plus. Like this is a newer phone that I know the Moment case hasn't come out for it yet, which is a case that allows you to put like lenses and stuff on here.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happens, as soon as those cases come out to people in the United States, there's going to be a flood of social media, all hashtagged shot on Moment,
Yeah.
That's part of their like hashtag campaign. But then it's also going to be like a style that no one has ever really seen because they've never seen Note 10 Plus camera shots with those lenses on them.
Yeah, and yours has a pretty upgraded camera, doesn't it?
Yeah, this thing's got like a wide angle, medium, and a telephoto.
Yeah.
So you get, with one lens, you can put it on 3 different actual physical lenses.
Crazy.
So you end up just getting a whole lot out of a single camera. That's a cool thing, first of all. But I think there's going to be a lot of photographers and videographers that use this thing.
Yeah.
So if you're one of the first ones that has a whole bunch of media out there, you're going to be at the forefront of a wave.
Yeah.
And that can be a lot, a lot of power to harness.
I was going to say that's the same with trends. That's the same with security. Like if Google's ranking things a different way, you need to know.
Yeah. So subscribe to those blogs, whichever applies to your genre of
Find a good
career.
one. Find one that interests you and just actually actively read it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 30 of them. If you don't have time for that, like when it gets sent to me twice a week, I take the 5-10 minutes and read the articles that I feel apply to me or are important to me.
Yeah. It's good toilet reading.
I wouldn't say that, but it's kind of hard to look at computer stuff on the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess so.
Yeah. But yeah, read. Because I've worked with people that have maybe been in the industry 30 years, but they don't keep up. So it's like talking to someone who literally doesn't know anything, kind of. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, like it's rough to see. Like I'll see a lot of people. Like I feel like there's a big conversation about color science when it comes to videography. Yeah, like a lot of people talk about like, well, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? And it's like, well, it comes down to what looks good, first of all. So it's very subjective, but there's also like changing technology.
Yeah.
So like back in the day, you had to do it on film. You had to do it on like these very specific machines, these huge things. And if you knew how to do that, you were a master in your field.
And that's a cool thing to like harken back and reference old technology and to use it, but you have to do it with a purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. So like the new school is like, everyone who's really highly trained in it, who has that old school mentality is like, well, I know how to do it, so I'm the authority. And it's like, well, you could like look at a YouTube tutorial and like figure out how to do it basically in like 10 minutes because there's programs that have simplified this now.
It's like digital photographers who still want to go use a darkroom.
Yeah.
Which is great and that's cool. Do it up, but do it with a purpose. Like if you don't need to shoot and produce everything in a darkroom because maybe you want to just shoot 30,000 pictures and you can on a digital camera. That would be a lot of film to produce.
Yeah. So like if you're having to cover like a sports event, film isn't going to be the best.
No.
But,
if you're trying to be artistic and do things a certain way, then go for it. Yeah, learn how to do it. Learn how to keep it alive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That doesn't really translate to web very well, but
well, I mean like there's like older practices I'm trying to think of. So like parallax scrolling became like a really big thing for a while there.
And it still has a purpose and you can still use it.
But it has like a specific purpose. It's like not specific, but it's like use it in the right time.
Yeah, I was going to say it's great for background images and that's actually the easiest way to use it. But there's a lot of ways to use parallax and just animation in general on a website to make things happen as you scroll down. Yeah. And it's really cool to see. I think the best library for that I've come across is like GreenSock.
Oh, cool.
It's a whole JavaScript library that you can use to add classes and things to your images and actually animate them with this library.
Interesting.
It's pretty cool.
Awesome.
I wish I got to use it more, but again,
is that a paid source or is that?
Certain plugins and certain things come with it. There is a free version where you can like just basic tween things, but a lot of the basic version you can do in just CSS animation now.
Oh, cool. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted there.
Yeah, no, you're good. Where was I going with this? Animation. Oh, you want to watch how much you use and where you use it in your website. Mm-hmm. Because again, it goes back to that load speed. If you're using it too much, if it's not being used with a purpose on your website, if you're not on a blazing fast host, it's just going to detract from your user experience rather than enhance it. You want to use it tastefully.
I encountered that once on the specs page of a product that I was trying to look up.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember just like screaming at my computer as I'm trying to scroll faster and and like things are flying across the screen and going up and down. And I'm just like, I just want the information.
Yeah. Something like that where it's more informationally driven. It doesn't make sense for. Like use that on your like about me page where you're talking about yourself and you can show off what you can do. Yeah. Like, use it on your homepage. Make it look really badass and cool.
Yeah. Somewhere where creativity is going to be appreciated.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, a spec sheet?
No.
Give me a PDF. I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So, you were talking about, you just mentioned, like, JavaScript and PHP and a couple different things.
Yeah.
I am while I am a digital native, I'm not, native to, like, the differences between different coding languages.
Yeah.
So like if you could give us a breakdown.
Okay.
I would love that.
Awesome. So I was taught in school that the HTML is the structure of a website. So it's the order of things. It's your containers. It's kind of like the framework of a house.
Oh, okay.
So the HTML is all your pieces that you want in order of how they're going to load pretty much.
Okay.
CSS is your paint and your furniture. It's the style. So it's how you add the colors and your fonts and how you make it look the way it does. So while HTML is like loading all those pieces in there, it can be as simple as like header, image, bullet point list, another header, another image, a paragraph, and it'll just be one long sequence without CSS.
Okay.
Once you add the CSS in there, you can say, okay, I want my header here, I want my image to float left of my text, I want it to be in 2 different blocks, and so how it flows together.
HTML is like, this is a living room. Yeah. And then CSS is, this is a red living room with, this kind of decor and blah, 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 and wainscoting and,
Yes.
Okay, so like that determines all of the specifics.
CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So it literally says in the name, in the order from the top to the bottom of this sheet is how these styles will be applied. So anything at the bottom will overwrite anything at the top.
Gotcha.
So if you want to say all paragraphs are 15-point font and they're this font. If you want one specific paragraph to be different, you can give it an ID, give it a class, and say, I want a paragraph called special paragraph to have like italics.
Okay. And then you'd be like, and here is special paragraph.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that would be in the HTML. You would say special paragraph lives here.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's HTML and CSS.
Yes. So JavaScript then comes in when you want more advanced functionality. JavaScript is usually like the animation of sliders, tabs, any kind of toggles where things are hiding and showing. You can...
It's like motion and change and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can do some of motion with CSS. There's some basic like rotations and things that you can do with CSS now that you couldn't do before.
Oh.
But JavaScript really is dynamically changing that information on the fly.
Okay. All right.
Where CSS, it happens on like scroll or a click.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And then, or it's just happening constantly.
So like going back to that house sort of thing, HTML is the living room. CSS is there's a red couch.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, what was it? JavaScript you were saying?
Yeah, JavaScript
would be like, and then we move the couch from here to there.
JavaScript would be the people in the house causing all kinds of chaos.
Yeah. So like Karen's going to move the couch closer to the table.
Yeah. So when someone clicks, that's when this happens. It's all event and trigger based usually.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Yeah. When you scroll, when this thing happens, do this. That's a lot of JavaScript.
I've used a program called Adobe Edge Animate. I'm pretty sure it's dead now. I think it's one of the programs that Adobe killed, but
oh no,
you used to. I think it was basically like, you know how Muse was like a graphical version of a coding thing.
Don't bring up Muse. Muse was a terrible experience.
Giving you PTSD here.
Yes.
Flashbacks.
Muse does not code things properly at all.
as someone who used to use Muse, I remember like the stuff that came out on the other end, and someone who actually knew about coding looking at it and just being like, it was just so bad. But okay, so like where Muse is the graphical version of
websites
of web design. Edge Animate was like the graphical version of, I would say, JavaScript. In that
interesting.
You could say that like, okay, once the user scrolls to this point, you want this object to have moved from here to here.
Yeah.
So like you could sort of do things like that, but it was with like a graphical interface.
I was gonna say some of the CSS animation things are like doing what JavaScript used to do. So you can do some things in both languages now, which there was really no crossover before, 5 years ago maybe. Some basic rotation, skewing, moving things, scaling things. You can do that in CSS now, where before you had to use JavaScript.
Gotcha.
So it's nice to, if you know both, you can use them appropriately. If you already loaded that JavaScript library, go ahead, use the JavaScript. It might be faster, but it gives you options to play with to see what loads quicker. Because CSS literally is not loading another library to do what it needs to do.
Okay.
But certain functionality might not be available on all browsers either. JavaScript's usually pretty universally accepted.
Okay, so some of them are a little bit more universal than others.
Yeah, and it all depends on if people have JavaScript enabled in their browser or not.
Okay. Right.
So in that case, the CSS one would be more prominent, but you can do more advanced things with JavaScript that you can't do with CSS.
Gotta have the latest version of JavaScript updated, right? I feel like I'm always getting that notification.
Yeah. That isn't that.
Or wait, no, maybe I'm thinking of Flash. Yeah, that's right. Because I go back to like websites and play Nintendo games online.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, you have to update Flash because I haven't used it in like...
I was going to say, you don't usually have to update your JavaScript.
Yeah, never mind.
I mean,
okay.
That's up to the web developer to know what's going on.
Whoops.
And then PHP is something that actually communicates with a database.
Okay.
So PHP is containing all of this stuff, like... For WordPress, anyway, it's made up of a PHP framework. And PHP is what is sending that information back and forth and pulling it from the database where everything is stored. So you can literally design an entire set of pages in PHP, but all the information about those pages is stored in a database somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So like the heading, everything about it, all the HTML pieces can live in the database if you're using some kind of a page builder.
Okay. Does that speed up page load times, or does that slow it down? Like the fact that it's referencing...
It does slow it down a little bit, but it is important if you're doing something where the user information is being stored, like a store.
Okay. So like e-commerce stores.
Yeah. So when you're shopping on an e-commerce store, everything that's like your order history and your preferences and your credit card information, where all that's saved, is in a database somewhere. So you need something that can talk to that database. HTML and CSS are literally just the structure of the page. They have no connection to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Or any personal information. Anything that can be affected by any users. So on a WordPress side of things, usually the back end of the website, all the pages that are contained in the website, like there's a framework of files that you upload.
Yeah.
But like the specific pages that are specific to your website, all of your images and where they are located on those pages, all that's stored in the database. That doesn't happen in the HTML itself, usually.
So back to the house analogy. That's like the telephone and the computer, where like the computer has like, if you're going to reference like client information.
Yeah.
You know, that information comes on. I know I'm making a stretch here.
I was like, I never really thought it like the house really only applies to HTML and CSS.
I'm sticking with that house, baby. Okay. I'm going all the way with it.
I guess PHP would kind of be like your neighborhood and like homeowners association or something kind of.
Okay, yeah. So it'd be like referencing another house.
Connecting all of the pieces together, because you can put HTML into your PHP.
Okay.
But the PHP is what is pulling that dynamic information into the HTML structure.
Gotcha.
So instead of designing 40 different like post pages, you design one and it'll say, okay, here's a heading 1, put the title in here.
Okay. So like you reference a list of information.
Here's where the image goes. Use the PHP to pull the image in. So it's literally like those dynamic pieces that are stored somewhere else. So you're designing a page once, but using it for 40 pages.
Okay. So like Amazon.
Okay.
The fact that there's like, they have a general structure to their page.
Yeah.
But then they have like a million different seller profiles and like products and all that stuff.
Yeah. Each one of those is a template. So PHP is creating those templates.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a better word for it.
This is magical.
So Amazon has one template for how a product search looks. So you have all those, like, if someone searches for this, pull in the products and have them look like 4 columns across and like 3 columns down before they have to click like see next page.
Okay.
Insert the page navigation here. Insert recent products or recommended products below that. Like that structure is the same regardless of what you search.
Yeah.
So someone's not designing a page specifically for camera equipment. Someone's designing a page for Amazon search and what gets displayed. Gotcha. And then it just some language similar to, I'm sure there's other languages like PHP out there. I'm sure Ruby can do it. I don't even know. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones that do similar functions. PHP is just what WordPress uses, so that's what I know.
Yeah, and I feel like I've heard of PHP, so I feel like it's a pretty...
I think it's an older language, actually.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So I'm glad it's still being updated and maintained.
Do you happen to know what like the letters stand for?
Not off the top of my head. I'm sure one of them's programming.
Okay. Programming, helping people.
I think the last word is programming. I actually couldn't tell you.
We'll figure it out. We'll put it in the description. Or
yeah,
something
like HTML is hypertext markup language. CSS is cascading style sheets. JavaScript is JavaScript.
Oh, wow.
What?
You're really knowledgeable about this stuff. This is cool to get this, because like these are all questions that I've had just about the internet. And
really?
Yeah, like I've never
good.
really.
I'm glad I can answer your questions.
Well, I've never really like known who to ask, so it's great to have you here as a a resource.
Awesome.
And if anyone else has any other questions for Ashley, definitely like ask those in the comments below.
Yes, I will get back to you.
We're gonna have her on here fairly often, I feel like. So she'll be joining us too on like gaming nights and stuff like that when we do live streams. So
we have a good time.
Come check us out on Twitch. We do stuff. It's at FCMG stay there. We play Nintendo games and whatnot. But on here on the podcast, we talk about cool things like PHP and all those different types of. Are there any other types of coding that you want to talk about? Like I know.
Those are the 4 I know. Like, I don't even fully know JavaScript. I'm able to piece together. It's like when you kind of learn another language and you can go to the country and you can read things and like get through ordering a sandwich and reading a menu. Like, I can take other people's JavaScript and modify it to do what I want it to do, and I can understand it and know how to make it function the way I want it to function. But I can't just sit here and write JavaScript.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I think that's a lot of learning the languages too. I don't use it enough. I'm more so based in the PHP and the HTML.
Yeah, it like comes down to what's practical. For you at the moment.
There's a lot of plugins and things that do the JavaScript for me, so I don't.
Gotcha.
I can just make it look good. I don't have to actually code it and write it out.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Kind of bridging from there, just the ability to like just pick and choose which coding languages you're using and all that stuff, and like use the ones for people who are thinking of getting into coding and like learning the languages. Is it as scary as people make it out to be? Because I've always heard like, oh, it's like learning a whole different language.
I mean, it is learning a whole different language, but I have a very math brain function. Like my brain, I was able to pick up like calculus formulas and stuff and just remember them. Once you accept what's happening and you just try to memorize what things cause other things to happen, you can start to put those pieces together. Like worry about understanding it later. Worry about like actively remembering what does what.
Gotcha.
So
learn the rules, and then you can
learn the
extrapolate
rules,
on that
and
later.
then you can learn how to bend the rules. Yeah.
That's just like film, honestly. Like that's something that we talked about in film school. It's like, people would be like, well, but I want to do a twist in the third act. And it's like, yeah, you can, but you should learn the rules of storytelling before you start breaking them. Because if you learn how to use them, you'll know how to break them with purpose.
Yeah. It's like if you're learning code and you're like, okay, well, a div is a container that holds stuff. Well, why is a div a container? Who cares why a div is a container? Just know that a div is a container that holds stuff.
Yeah.
Once you know that and you start putting stuff in it, you can learn how to use them. It doesn't matter why that's named the way it is. It doesn't, as long as you know and
you understand the functionality.
You start to use it in the proper way, it just becomes the thing that you use.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know.
It becomes a part of your language.
Yeah, if you're I don't really remember calculus anymore, but I was good at it back in high school. But like the a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you don't need to know why that's a thing or why that works right away. The first functionality of using that is learning how to use it and how it relates to a triangle.
Yeah.
And beyond that, then you can start to break it down if you want to go deeper in the history of how it was figured out or why it always works. But it's important to follow the formula before you understand the formula almost.
Gotcha.
But there's some great resources out there for learning coding. And I recommended it to somebody recently, and I don't remember who. But Team Treehouse is pretty fantastic.
Team Treehouse. I think you've talked to me about that.
Maybe.
That might have been, yeah.
It's just a great resource regardless of what type of coding you want to get into.
Okay.
It's actually where I was starting to do Ruby on Rails tutorials. They have Python tutorials. They have C++ tutorials, but they do have a course that goes through the basics of web design.
Okay.
And it's a video series, and they have active workshops that you can follow along with. So you'll download the files that they're working on screen. You can do them alongside the person on screen. Mm-hmm. And at the end of each chapter, they actually give you little quizzes to make sure that you understand and we're paying attention. So if you get the quiz wrong,
that's big.
You can go back and watch it again.
Yeah. Okay. See, that's I was talking to Foley last week about learning platforms, and he mentioned Udemy. Udemy is a platform that I've used as well.
Okay.
And that's worked really well for me. But then there was another platform that I started using called UXL.
Yeah.
And UXL, I had I really liked that experience just because it was a little bit different from some Lynda courses that I've done. And
Lynda seemed to be really boring and dry. We had a subscription through school when I went to college, and I just couldn't listen to the people talk. Team Treehouse, they're very personable and friendly and fun, and they try to start you off slow, but they speed it up real quick.
Yeah.
So if you're catching on, it's great. You can watch it on 2 times speed and not waste your time with it.
I found Lynda was good for if you want to hear the old heads talk about the industry.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
That worked well for me then, and then UXL I really liked because they would give me they would actually give you tests afterwards.
Yeah,
where it's
that was nice with Team Treehouse too. It was a nice refresher.
And then you get that downloadable certificate.
Yeah, I think Team Treehouse does something similar too. I don't know. I haven't used it in a while. I was using it when I was at Sorrelli about 4 years ago.
Gotcha.
To learn Ruby. But they have a lot of great courses. The instructors are all easy listening, and the episodes are short too.
Nice.
Bite-sized
chunks.
They had episodes as short as 5 minutes, and they had episodes as long as 25 minutes. But they break it up into really digestible chunks, so that way you're not sitting there for 3 hours trying to learn something.
Yeah, or you get lost halfway through a video.
Your schedule. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Ashley, it's been really great talking to you today. I really appreciate you coming down for the podcast.
It's been fun.
We'll have you on again soon.
Sounds good.
Ashley Reinhard, web designer, graphic designer, and all-around creative professional in the area. You can find her working at Meris, and you should definitely check them out if you're looking for web design and all kinds of stuff like that.
Come ask Ashley to do your website.
Yeah. Well, it's always a little awkward getting the handshake in here, but thank you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for watching another episode of the FCMG Podcast. As always, peace.